In today's video, I'm going to show you how I 3D printed this flat mount for my Starlink. It meant I had to cut apart my dish on the table saw, but it was well worth it to avoid having to set it up every time I wanted to use it. I also converted it to 12 volt power so that I wouldn't need to run the inverter just to use Starlink. I eventually figured out how to make an all-in-one 12 volt unit that let you power directly off the cigarette lighter of your car. I started to get requests from others, so I began making the mounts in batches, and then as Starlink released new dishes, we designed new mounts to meet the need. This led to us creating a website and beginning to ship the mounts all over. Our dining room became a shipping and receiving area, and then eventually we moved it into the shop. We're so thankful for all the support we received while running this business, and we want to give a special thank you to the new owners who are willing to share these files with the community. If you need a mount or anything for a newer dish, definitely check out Trio Flatmount. Now back to the project. At first I scoured printables and Thingiverse trying to find a 3D model that suited my needs, but I just couldn't find what I had in mind, so I went to Fusion 360 and modeled my own. I looked at common failure points of other mounts, and one thing I found was that they threaded the screws directly into the plastic, so I modeled in room for heat set inserts. I also modeled in holes for waterproof cable seals, as lots of people had issues with the factory Starlink cable. Later I added a second hole for an IP68 Gore-Tex pressure release valve to prevent any condensation buildup in the mount. I wanted to print it in as few pieces as possible, so I knew I was going to need a large 3D printer, but I also wanted to print in ASA filament, so I was going to need a heated chamber. Thankfully I found the Kitty X-Max 3, which met both of those criteria. If you're not familiar with ASA filament, it's similar to ABS, but 10 times more UV resistant. It also doesn't warp as much or give off as many noxious fumes when printing, although it does some, which is why I moved the printers out to the spacious garage with good airflow. And of course I apply some Elmer's glue stick to the print bed. To put in perspective just how fast this printer is, this print would take 40 to 50 hours on a typical Prusa 3D printer.
That's unreal.
Next, I just needed to clean out the support material. As you could probably tell, I was really impressed with the print quality, especially given the speed. Here you can see the nut fits in perfectly, and the cable seal is all set. I didn't like the others online, just had the cable go through and glued or siliconed around it. That seemed to be a common failure point, so I think this will hold up much, much better.
So this is before gluing. You can see the cracks certainly are visible.
I'm glad I did those tongue and groove joints for a little bit more surface area when I go to acetone weld it.
Now I'm gonna make my ASA slurry. So I've got acetone, some gloves, respirator, a glass container that's sealable, and scraps and leftover ASA from failed prints.
The acetone will act as a solvent that'll break down and then weld the ASA together. We're going to add some ASA into it so we get more of like a glue or a fill that can actually fill any gaps or cracks between the pieces. The cool thing with this is it will literally weld the pieces together so that it becomes one solid part. I recommend doing this outside with the proper safety equipment, and you'll have to let it sit for around 24 hours for the ASA to be fully absorbed. I recommend using a small natural bristle brush to paint on your ASA slurry. If you can let it sit for a minute after you apply it, the ASA will soften, and then you can just push the pieces together and hold it like super glue. Here are a few clips showing the finished result, and you can see how it really fills in the seam, and keep in mind that's a tongue and groove joint, so that ASA slurry fill goes all the way through that joint, creating a very strong bond. I gave it a quick sand to clean up the seams and moved on to the next step, which is laser cutting the 3mm acrylic for the base. I'm very fortunate to have a Flux Beambox Pro laser, which has a massive cutting area of over 23.5 by 14.5. The base of the mount fits just perfectly on the cut bed, and you can see I oversized those corner holes slightly as I didn't want the screws to touch the acrylic at all. Because this has a little bit of flex, you can see in and out and this way. I just made a little Starlink jig, and that just allows everything to line up perfectly flush. I proceeded to scuff up the edges using a Scotch-Brite pad, and then did one final clean using mineral spirits. For adhesive, I used ABS cement, and I tried to apply it evenly around the edge of the frame. This acts similar to the acetone and actually welds the two parts together. After letting it sit overnight with weight on it, I installed the cable gland as well as the pressure relief valve. Next, I applied a bead of white Flex Seal caulk around the inner edge of the mount to make sure it was fully sealed. To find the correct length of the O-ring gasket, I simply positioned it in place in the groove of the frame. Then I cut the O-ring on a 45-degree angle to get maximum surface area for gluing. I cleaned the ends with acetone and then used this super glue to glue it together. Super strong. Keep in mind there's actually no distractional force when we're mounting it. It's literally just to hold the gasket together so that it sits in the groove nicely. Next, I used a soldering iron to install these M5 heat set inserts You can see the temp is set to 325 degrees Celsius, which is hotter than the printing temp of 250 degrees. You can get these little heat set insert soldering iron tips. This one's specifically for M5. Super helpful. Then I needed to cut the polycarbonate top on my Onefinity Journeyman CNC. I used a 1/8 inch upcut bit to get a nice smooth cut on the polycarbonate plastic. Oh man, I'm pumped on how this came out. These will be through bolted in the corners. Once they go through the heat set inserts, they will drop all the way through the mount, and that will allow mounting points like these special M5 threaded magnets. They could sit right in the corners. Before cutting the dish, I ran a quick speed test to compare before and after flat mounting. So not a great speed test, probably about to be expected. We're on the mobile or the Roam version, which is deprioritized, and then also it's about 11 o'clock in the morning here. So probably not prime time to be using Starlink. Because I'm going to cut it on the table saw, it's important to note that we don't want to stow Dishy before doing so. We want this stand leg part to be down like that so that you have something to hold on to when you're running it through the table saw. Before cutting the dish, you should double check the cut height using calipers or tape measure, and then use a flathead screwdriver to pry out that cable. I recommend using painter's tape or construction paper to protect the front face of the dish. Then position the fence 1 inch from the edge of the blade and the blade height to 1/2 inch for the side cuts. Of course, you should double check these measurements based on your own mount and start low with the blade height, as you can always increase it after. For the ends, I increased the blade height to 1 3/8. If you go too deep here, you could cut the JST cable, so be careful just to cut the plastic. As you may have guessed, those outer corners are still not cut, so the final step is to use an oscillating multi-tool. Try and hold it as flat as you can and work your way around those corners. Be careful when removing the base because there are those two cables. One is power and data to the dish through the JST connector, and the other is power to the motors.
Guys, look at that. Hardly any cleanup to do. That way just seems like so much less risk. It gives you a flat edge in the end. You can get your exact depth or height measurement that you need right off the bat. Dremel, you're going on a 45, you're cutting towards the board. And that's the thing I didn't really like. The only sketchy spot is right here. Otherwise, you could have your blade really sitting so high. Another reason why I don't do the pry apart method, where it's ultrasonically welded here, is because you can see all the little support pieces coming up off the board on the Starlink frame. So that's why I chose to keep the frame rather than doing the pry apart method. A, it looks more time consuming, and then I didn't want a flimsy Starlink in the end. Guys, absolutely perfect. As you can see, it really fits in there well, so it's not going to move around. So next thing I need to do is just cut out my spot here for the cable.
Sorry I blocked the camera in this shot. Basically, you want to make sure not to cut too deep to avoid damaging the dish. Lastly, we go ahead with a file and just clean up that edge. Next, we need to remove the cable from the base of the dish, so basically use a flathead screwdriver to pry everything apart and free up that cable. I fed the cable through without using the grommet because I wanted to do a quick test using the stock Starlink router and cord setup. I used super glue in the corners to hold the gasket in place and then a few screws to hold the cover on. So everything looks to be lining up really well so far. I've got my factory connector still on the end here, which is why I didn't pass through the cable steel yet. I'm going to chop this off and then we'll actually mount it in a waterproof way using this cable gland. Let's connect it back up to the factory router and we will test it, make sure it still works. Okay, we gave it 10 minutes and we are back for the speed test. Looking good. Now I went ahead and cut off that proprietary connector so I could feed it through the waterproof cable gland. So before we close it up, we're going to use this PTFE lubricant on the O-ring. This is great for any rubber O-ring gasket seals. It'll just help you give a little bit more waterproofing to the O-ring here. For assembly, I just had my impact on the lowest setting and stopped before it clicked. And that is looking pretty clean. Now I can go ahead and make my waterproof connection. It's going to plug into this shielded connector. There are heaps of great resources online for learning how to crimp these Ethernet cables, but after doing hundreds of them myself, I'm going to share a couple tips that helped me. First is to use that cut portion of the PVC jacket to untwist those pairs and separate them into single strands. Then use a tool like needle nose pliers to run along the edge and straighten each individual wire. Then you'll need to arrange them so they're in this order. It's standard T56AB pinout. Finally, using wire cutters, trim them so they're all the same length, and it'll be so much easier to feed them through the pass-through connector. Then we just need to install the shielded waterproof connector, and that grommet goes around there to waterproof the cable, and you snug up the nut to put some pressure against that grommet. To mount it on the roof, I simply drilled out 4 holes and used stainless steel washers and nuts and a little bit of silicone to waterproof the box. So the last thing I need to do is make my final crimp for this connection, and we are all set. Again, I just used that same T568B pinout, and if you were using the stock Starlink router, this is all you need to do. Crimp the 2 ends and install it onto that waterproof connector, and you are set to go with the stock Starlink router. Last thing to do is just add a couple zip ties to hold the cable in place so it doesn't go over the solar panel. Then to house the 12 volt components, I found this parametric box file that was really easy to modify for my needs. As you can see, it came out super nice. You can see my vent holes turned out nicely, as well as the screw holes in each corner. You can go ahead and remove the supports. So I'm going to orient this case exactly how it'll be sitting in the van. So my Peplink router is somewhere down here. I'll have this with the power ports and the Starlink coming in, going on the top. So that's my PoE in out, will be facing up. My data out to my router, and the 12 to 48 volt converter will be sitting like this. I secured the devices in the case using VHB tape and then connected the 48 volt power leads into the PoE injector. I'm not going into all the details on these specific devices because I quickly found that there were better options available and there's tons of information online. Finally, I created a logo and used the Xtool F1's infrared laser to engrave it onto the case. So to walk through the final setup here, we have the Peplink Max BR1 Pro 5G router with the Starlink data WAN connection coming into that. So basically we have redundancy where we can have cellular data or Starlink. So we've double checked all the connections. We've got the Starlink and the van outside. Turn on Starlink.
68 megabits per second in the snow?
And of course this wouldn't be a proper Canadian test without some snow in the mix. But I'm stoked this is all working. Really happy with how the mount turned out, being fully waterproof, and we're getting good speeds. I think that's pretty much it. Feel free to leave any questions or feedback in the comments below, and I'll drop the link somewhere. You can check out the files, and good luck printing and building. We'll catch you on the next one.